Oh, howdy y'all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for some Path of Exile 2 discussion. 0.2.0 starts in a few hours. I wanted to go through what I'm going to be league starting in this league. This is not something that is a highly theory crafted build, because honestly, it's not possible to highly theory craft everything. We've only just got stats on gems. I'll put a link to those down in the description below. And also, we don't know the feel of all of the new gems. This, however, is going to be an Amazon. There's an Amazon that is going to be critical strike focused and that is going to use a spear. My reasoning for using a spear and playing an Amazon: shiny and new. There is power in this Ascendancy, but there's also going to be a particular playstyle thing you're going to need to keep in mind. And that is that the primary way you're going to be gaining frenzy charges is through use of the parry mechanic and the skill disengage. So you will need to equip a buckler. This is a pure dexterity shield, and you'll also need to use it and actively parry frequently. When you recently have parried, you can then use disengage. Disengage will gain you a frenzy charge when it hits an enemy. This is going to be your frenzy charge gainer. You have a number of ways that you can spend them and be paid off for using frenzy charges throughout the entirety of the skills that are available. We're going to have to test all the different skills, so I'm only going to be talking about a broad strokes overview, and then that's going to change as we get to play around with the new skills and the new class and the new Ascendancy. You're going to be starting as a Huntress. You're going to be using a spear, and the Ascendancy plan is as follows. We definitely want to spec critical strike and penetrate. We're going to experiment with elemental infusion. This could be terrible, it could be fantastic. If it's fantastic, we're going to spec infused avatar as well. If it's marginal, we'll keep it. If it's bad, we'll ditch it. If we end up ditching it, then the fallback plan is going to be to pick up Predatory Instinct. This is solidly mediocre, but it's a little bit better than mediocre. So basically, it's going to come down to whether elemental infusion feels good or not. That's going to be how we decide there. After that, if we've got any points left over, it'll be whichever defensive option feels best. We're going to start with Mystic Harvest because a lot of things on the Amazon end up converting damage to elements, but we're not necessarily going to be wedded to that option. Now, we're also going to be using a Herald skill, and we're going to try all three of the main ones. I'm not going to be looking into the physical and Herald of Blood option. That is definitely viable. There's a number of bleed skills available for the spear, but I'm going to be looking at the elemental conversion options instead. Okay, so that's the idea, and I've got some notes on the Mobalytics write-up. Link to that down in the description below. That has got some information on when you want to start out with Predatory Instinct, but of course, you're definitely going to be changing things around because this is day one, it's a new class, we don't know how good the skills are going to feel. About Critical Strike. Critical Strike has a text: chance to hit with attacks can exceed 100%, gain additional critical hit chance, and this has been confirmed by grinding your games to be base critical hit chance, equal to 25% of your excess chance to hit with attacks. Now, let's just start out with the bad news. This doesn't scale as high as people think. It's not going to get you 12.5%. Unless you can reduce an enemy's evasion rating to 0, or unless you can get your accuracy rating to literal infinity, you're not going to get 12.5% base crit from this. In practice though, expect to get something like 6% base crit, which is pretty good if you are striking without blinding enemies, but you do invest in accuracy. If you do blind enemies, maybe 7, maybe even 7.5% here. Blind is going to be worth investing in, and one of the things we're going to be taking on the passive tree is increased effect of blind. Some numbers on this for the Arbiter of Ash here, but basically I'm of the opinion you definitely want to take blind because of that. In terms of how we're going to inflict blind, it's going to be through the use of Spearfield, at least to start with. Spearfield, link to blind support, and we're also going to test out Pin. Whether or not Pin ends up being good or not, that's the sort of thing you can't predict in advance of playing a build. Also, very important warning, some rare monsters and also bosses in certain circumstances can have the modifier evasive. This is the equivalent of you having 50% less accuracy when attacking them. That's kind of sketchy. That's going to mean your critical strike chance against those is going to fall off pretty hard. So keep that one in mind. That's going to be pain. Now, your expected playstyle against weak monsters. Don't underestimate the things. I die a lot more often to fast-moving, fast-hitting small monsters than I do to bosses. Dart in, parry when you're able to get the parry buffs, so just raise your shield for a short period of time when you think you're going to take damage. Don't keep it raised, because if you keep it raised, you'll end up getting yourself heavy stunned. Then use disengage to get out of there. This is going to be linked to profusion. That'll gain you an average of a frenzy charge and a half each time you do it. Then you strike with a variety of skills against weak monsters. We've just got to test them out. At the moment, I'm not really certain which ones are going to feel best. We've got Herald of Thunder, Herald of Ice, and Herald of Ash are all worth trying. We definitely want one of these all the time, but which one is going to depend upon the specific spears that you've got at the time. So, if you've got a spear that deals good lightning damage and has a good chance to shock enemies, at least weak ones, Herald of Thunder is the way to go. Herald of Ice if you've got lots of cold damage on your spear, and Herald of Ash if you don't have either cold or lightning damage in big amounts on your spear. And that's going to change around a bit as you're leveling up, so keep that one in mind. We're going to want to use a bunch of other things as well. Like we mentioned, Spearfield, which can be linked to Pin and Lockdown or linked to Blind. Lots of different options there. Against tougher monsters, we want to soften them up with something that is linked to Blind. Additionally, Cold Exposure might end up being good here. We're critically striking a lot, and as a result, Cold Exposure, its trigger condition is to inflict a critical hit on an enemy, and that will then impart Cold Exposure. Well, something like Spearfield is very likely to inflict critical hits, and as a result, that may well be the way to go. There's a whole bunch of suggested support gems I've got here. These are things you want to be bouncing around between, and of course, this list will get extended once we've got some play experience in game. Fire Infusion, Lightning Infusion, Cold Infusion, only one on any given skill. Martial Tempo, one of the best gems in the game. Unfortunately, Cadence has been nerfed from what was originally released, so you probably don't necessarily want to use that, or maybe you do, but it doesn't look like it's going to be spectacular. You got Life Thief. Heavy Swing if you decide to go more physical oriented. I don't think I'm going to use this, but at least it's an option. There is definitely a build with the Amazon and Spears that involves darting in using the dash skill that always inflicts bleed, and then consuming that bleed for things, and that build would definitely use Heavy Swing. Then you got Blind, Conduction and Innovate on one skill, Ice Bite and Glaciation on one skill, Rage. Very important to note with Rage, it requires the gem that it's attached to have the melee tag. Some spear skills have this, some do not. And then there's also Potential, which has the potential to be good. In the passive tree, your priorities are going to be to pick up the following clusters. Now, this is not an absolutely rigid pathing. These are the things I want to pick up. Honed Instincts, Blur, and Eagle Eye are close by. And where I've got these numbers, what they mean is if you imagine the passive tree to be a clock face, so 12 is due north, 6 is due south, 3 is due east, then 4 o'clock is where you start on the tree. So Javelin, Swift Skewering, that's a spear cluster that is at 4 o'clock. Falcon Dive, Heartbreaking, Struck Through, Serrated Edges, Hone Instincts, Blur, Eagle Eye, Cooked. Cooked has changed from what it is both on Mobalytics and on the current game passive tree. It now reads 60% increased critical damage bonus, which is fantastic. The condition about Flask Effect is gone, but it has a drawback. 15% reduced global defenses. So this means 15% reduced energy shield, evasion, and armor. This is perfectly manageable. We don't like 15% reduced evasion. We actually get quite a bit of defense out of evasion, but we can live with it because it's just one travel node. And in exchange for taking that extra travel node, we're getting 60% crit damage bonus, which is just great. Acceleration, the Unsight cluster is really good. Unsight itself is fine, but the cluster around it's really good. It's also close to escape velocity. And then we have Pocket Sand, 50% increased blind effect. So easy to underestimate this. This is fantastic. Once you've inflicted blind on an enemy, which would be pretty quick, this is going to be the equivalent of having something like 12.5% more accuracy and 12.5% more evasion rating. 12.5% more evasion rating, in turn, maybe something like 12% more effective hit points. Only when the enemy is blinded, but Pocket Sand, really, really good. Stand and Deliver and Catalysis are close to each other, and Catalysis is quite good defensively as well. It's something you'd take just for the damage on it, although you wouldn't be ecstatic about it, but the fact that it's got defense as well is great. Now, I'm going to be keeping a character diary. The rest of this is all blank, of course, because we haven't yet got a character diary. The servers are not yet online. If you want to follow this, I'll put a link to it down in the description below. Otherwise though, that's all I got at the moment. Anyone that says they've got a completely worked out build for the new Ascendancies and the new classes and the new skills, they don't yet. They've just got a speculative build. I also only have a speculative build, but I'm not going to bamboozle you by saying I've got anything else. I'll leave it there. May your Varlobs have interesting results.